Sometimes you get a sniff of a story and you think that can't be right, because if it was right, it would be much bigger than it actually is. And I'm in that position this afternoon. I'm in that position today. And an MP has just stood up in the House of Commons and made precisely, South Antrim Ulster Unionist, actually, Robin Swan, has just drawn attention to precisely the issue that I think might be a rather bigger deal than an awful lot of people who should know better have thus far acknowledged. Talking about import and export checks, longer queues at the border and the like. If you thought that saga was over, I think you might be wrong, and December the 13th could be a form of D-Day for you. And remarkably, given that it's just been raised in the House of Commons, I've got a guest joining me, James Ball from the New European, joining me after the 12:30 news to sound, I think it's probably fair to say, to sound the alarm on this one. But before that, and before we go to Natasha, the now traditional run-through of some of the text that came in during PMQs. This from Ian. I'm Labour through and through, but Badenoch was much better today. This from Caroline. She sounds like a school ground bully. Why can't we have grown-up politics? This from Madeline. Poor showing from Starmer. He's making Badenoch sound reasonable and principled. Chris writes, I wish Starmer could have shut that nonsense down. Neil points out the first thing she mentioned was immigration, and then she goes on to say, I'm not talking about immigration. I think she said, I'm not asking about immigration, to be fair. Rob says she's an absolute joke. Kyle says, I didn't think it could get any worse. Is Keir Starmer writing her speeches for her to set up his own points? And Wouter makes a point that many of you make. Wouldn't Badenoch have been a convict had Harriet Harman pushed for prosecution when Badenoch hacked and changed her website? Tony has enjoyed things as much as we have. He writes, you're right, James, she's hilarious.
Who messaged the Harriet Harman thing in?
Wouter.
Someone, a Labour source has just basically said the same thing to me.
Really?
Bold of Kemi to go in on Louise, given she boasted about hacking Harriet Harman's website, which carried a jail sentence of up to 5 years at the time.
Yes.
Should have put that one in the Prime Minister's
Well, it was a great
pack.
line. I mean, and again, it's why I think she's so good for business. Politicians with convictions. We want conviction politicians, not politicians
that
with
was
convictions.
A good line.
It's a brilliant line, until you remember that the last two Tory Prime Ministers have been politicians with convictions.
Of sorts, yes.
And that, as you say yourself, she's herself confessed to a crime that would have resulted in a custodial sentence had Harriet Harman been minded to pursue it. But she was better.
She was better.
There was room for improvement.
There's
and you were
always room
better.
for
You got
improvement.
Louise Haigh bang on.
Yeah. I did all right there. Louise Haigh, tick. Reset, tick. Assisted dying, no. We didn't have too much about that.
Told you.
And there was one more that I got right.
Marbles.
Didn't get
There's
Elgin
two
Marbles.
all, actually, because I told you those two wouldn't come up.
Did get OECD, though.
Yes.
Told you we want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think overall, Kemi Badenoch, another better performance. She's just better when she just takes the tone down, slows her answers down a little bit, relaxes into it a little bit, and just stops throwing petty insults across the chamber. And that's what I think that makes Keir Starmer rise to it. And it brings a little bit of, grown-up politics back to the chamber. It shows that they can do it. It's still entertaining. It's still a good watch without having to throw barbs quite so much at each other.
It actually plays into his hands when she does that as well, because that makes him look like a grown-up while she looks like the sort of Nerf gun school child.
Exactly.
But that didn't happen this week, to be clear. I think we're both saying that.
There's obviously, like we were saying before, there's plenty of stuff for the Tories to go on here. There's a long list of things that is, more than ripe to ask questions about. Louise Haigh, of course. Understandable that was top of Kemi Badenoch's list.
Why doesn't he answer it better? He didn't answer that well. He didn't answer it at all, to be fair, which people do notice. She's right when she says the public are watching.
They do, and the Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner beforehand, repeatedly not very good at answering the questions. Truss. We forgot Liz Truss.
I did.
Oh, you did?
You
did last two. So, well, it's easy to be done.
Who could possibly forget Liz Truss, eh? Well, I do apologise.
Congratulations.
I apologise to the lettuce.
Congratulations to Michel Barnier, who will be apparently a couple of days more than Liz Truss in office, if indeed this vote of confidence happens today.
I did just call them the Elgin Marbles, as Jamie points out, but no one likes a pedant, Jamie. So why doesn't he? I mean, why doesn't he just tell us what? I mean, because he can't say we've done it because the right-wing media in this country would not let it rest, or because he can't give the real reason for it, or because he's found out stuff that he didn't know before.
Well, that was the suggestion from Downing Street on Friday, that there was more that came out about Louise Haigh's previous convictions, offences of sorts, for what she did and didn't tell the police about a stolen mobile phone. And it's a very complicated story, but Downing Street suggesting that Keir Starmer didn't have the full story when he appointed her as Northern Ireland Secretary in opposition and then appointed her to the cabinet. Now, we don't know if that's 100% true and what he did and didn't know,
Sure.
but there are questions for him to answer. Why did he feel that it was important to put her in this position? He obviously couldn't back her. That was quite clear from today's Prime Minister's questions, and that's does probably say a little bit more about it than we might usually first read into it.
Yes.
The fact that he's not come out and said, actually, I'm going to pay tribute to Louise Haigh. She was a great Transport Secretary. Thanks so much for your service.
Yeah.
He didn't say a word about
he
her.
really didn't, did he? So that suggests he may feel let down.
A little bit, yeah, and maybe a little bit thrown in front of the bus.
I think we're allowed to speculate. We're not running any risk of libel. And if we work on the presumption that there may be more to come, and I think we've probably both heard whispers that how much momentum is removed from any coming revelations by the resignation?
It's totally gone. The wind's out the sails now. Whatever comes out about Louise Haigh, she's now a former cabinet minister. It might stop her from going back into the cabinet.
Yes.
Keir Starmer did hint in his resignation letter, the exchange of letters that we saw last week, that he would like to see her back in frontline government at some point, and other ministers have said that in the morning rounds the past couple of days. So that's a possibility, but if more comes out about what happened with this conviction and what didn't, then I think that could kill her chances of a cabinet comeback.
And journalistically, how much would change there? So if you were pursuing this story, who was it? The Times that got it?
Times and Sky News both broke that.
Will they be going after
Thursday.
it with as much enthusiasm as they would have done if she was still in the ministry?
No,
I mean, if you
it's
take
not.
it to your news editor, it's a long time since I had to speak to news editors, Natasha. You take it to your news editor, do they say, well, come on, this horse has bolted? Really?
They will, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. The momentum is sort of gone now. I'm sure they'll still be digging around for whether there is anything and what Keir Starmer did and didn't know at the time. And, there will be people who I'm sure wanted to talk about. The interesting thing is, who briefed that story? Where did it come from? Someone must have known about this conviction, where it came from, unearthed the documents, and did it to sort of, unearth and embarrass Louise Haigh, and it ultimately got a scalp at the end of it. Who are her enemies in government or outside of government actually working to bring her down? We had the P&O ferry row, which obviously left her on quite thin ice with Downing Street. Somebody probably knew that if they put this out in the public domain, it was going to tip her over and she was going to be out of cabinet.
They're perceived as very much to the left of the current cabinet, which some people may think perhaps explains the process you've just described. We haven't spoken about this, it occurs to me. So how big a loss is she to Keir Starmer? How big is... I mean, today we learn that a railway line is being nationalised. That's a huge political moment, and the woman that would have presided over it is no longer in post.
Exactly. I think it is huge. And, the transport agenda, the Department for Transport's got some of the biggest number of bills in any department. In the King's speech, it was really packed with stuff that they want to do. Nationalising the railways, of course, something that Keir Starmer thinks is a fantastically popular policy amongst the public, even if it might not reduce our bills, even if it might not make the trains run any more on time. We're all going to have to wait to see the details of what Great British Rail will give us first. But yes, this should have been Louise Haigh's big moment, announcing the first railways to come into nationalisation will start next year in May, and these are the companies that it's going to affect. This should have been her moment, for the government, it's potentially quite embarrassing that she had to resign in this way.
Have you had much to do with her?
Yeah, I've met her a couple of times. I've met her.
Is she nice?
People. Yeah, she's lovely. She's really nice. But look, that's not about what I think, is it?
Yeah, I know. I'm just interested.
But yeah, look, I think she's quite down to earth as a cabinet minister. I think I don't think Keir Starmer will hugely miss her in cabinet because I don't think they're natural political bedfellows. She's far more to the left of the Labour Party, but equally he knows the importance of keeping people like Louise Haigh in cabinet because he needs to hold this coalition of the Labour Party together, and without those left-wing voices that come with the support of the unions, that come with the support of the grassroots of the Labour Party, his entire coalition risks falling apart if he doesn't keep that together.
It's interesting. And Heidi Alexander has been around a while.
She has.
She's a known quantity.
She has a trusted voice and, worked with Sadiq Khan as Deputy Mayor for Transport. She knows this brief back to front. She does know about transport. She's another woman to obviously knock back the critics who say, you're just going to appoint another man to the heart of government. So there's that. And I think she's slightly more, probably more to the right of the party than Louise Haigh, but still sort of fits the bill there. So yes, I think there are questions for Keir Starmer to answer on this one. It does potentially embarrass him. It is his first cabinet resignation, and it is quite soon into government. It doesn't usually happen this quickly. But yes, I think Keir Starmer failing to answer the questions, like I say, really does tell you a little bit about what he thinks about Louise Haigh.
And finally, a lot of people may be a little bit nonplussed by the enthusiasm Keir Starmer has for talking about immigration. And you know, for two obvious reasons. Number one, he is in charge of it, and it is almost always bad news if you're coming from the position that immigration is generally bad, which is unfortunate, but arguably that argument has been lost by fact fans. And secondly, because the Labour Party is perceived, rightly or wrongly, I think rightly historically, as being more relaxed about immigration than the Conservative Party. But he's hitting her hard with phrases like open borders.
Yeah. It's really interesting seeing the way that Keir Starmer handles the issue of migration. It's something that he obviously knows is such a hot political potato, not just for the right-wing press, but for a lot of everyday working-class people up and down the country have genuine concerns about it.
And middle-class and upper-class, Natasha.
Everybody, for sure. But that was what Keir Starmer mentioned in his migration speech last week in Downing Street. When he was referring to these sky-high migration numbers that have actually been revised up, 900,000 net migration the year before last. Like I say, all under the Tories. Really interesting, though, that he's still saying it's too high and I'm going to bring the numbers down. He will be able to do that.
Well, he won't. He will, but they're going to come down anyway. So I mean, this is clever politics, albeit quite transparent for those of us who watch it for a living, is that they're going to come down quite far and quite fast for obvious reasons, not just Ukraine and Hong Kong, but also the consequences of some of the policies that the last government brought in. And you can close your eyes for a while and ignore the growing vacancies in some of the most affected sectors. But he can do this rhetoric, secure in the knowledge that when they come down largely through gravity than anything else.
A bit like Rishi Sunak and inflation,
bingo,
right? It's going to happen.
It's a win.
It's a win.
Except unlike Rishi Sunak and inflation, he doesn't render himself a hypocrite because he hasn't claimed at any point that he had nothing to do with them going up.
Yeah, true.
Because he didn't.
True, completely true. But I'm sure he will take credit for them coming down once they do.
Which explains the rhetoric, the slightly
he's talking tough now, and he's going to say later on, look,
told
it was exactly, I've done it. But yeah, look, his language on migration last week was really tough. Keir Starmer knows he's got to keep that wing of his party happy, and he knows it is a big issue. Small boats are a big issue. Lots of Labour MPs telling me it's still continued to be a big issue, especially in places like Kent. He knows he's got to be on the ball on this, and we are expecting a plan for how he's going to further drive down those numbers. I think he will get a bit stuck, the fact that he's not put any form of number or ballpark figure on this at all. What is acceptable and what is not? And, the Tories got themselves into a huge muddle over the 100,000 figure.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, which is totally why he doesn't want to do it. But actually, he's got to say, well, actually, what does he think is reasonable? And it opens up this argument again. How much are the Tories prepared to sacrifice economic growth in favour of migration? That's the argument that the Tories grappled with for years and completely failed to do both, arguably. Growth on the floor, migration soaring. So they got the worst of both worlds, and Keir Starmer, I think, should keep an eye on that one.
Natasha Clark, great stuff. Thank you. Do you keep a tally? That was probably a good week for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I was good. I think I got 3. I'll take 3
That's a win.
if that's okay.
That's a huge win.
I think it's a good win for me.
Definitely.